friends. Give me a second. Hello. Oh, that will work. Hello. Good morning or afternoon. I am going to be talking today about boundary setting, specifically for festivals, but really everything I'm going to say is relevant to all kinds of life situations. So as a lot of you know, I teach a methodology called Empowerment Self-Defense, which is a holistic violence prevention methodology that works with a mix of physical martial arts techniques and verbal strategies for setting boundaries, using the voice, and keeping ourselves safe as we listen to our gut, our intuition. And I am going to be teaching 2 sessions, where are we, Sunday, in about a week at Envision Festival in Costa Rica. So hopefully I'll see a lot of Instagram people there. And actually get to hang with y'all in real life and enjoy the dance floor. And I would love for you to join either or both of the sessions. The first one will be Monday, the 27th at 8 a.m. and the second one is Thursday, March 2nd, sometime in the early afternoon. And both sessions are empowerment self-defense. They're short, so they're going to be a very short introduction to what is quite a large method, and we'll see a few physical and a few verbal techniques. But I think of the things that I teach, one of the most practical for daily life and for festival life also is the boundary work. So I want to talk a little bit about boundary setting in general, and then share 2 techniques that I think are especially useful for people who are heading to Envision or heading to other festivals this season to stay safe and to feel safe while we're in this space of play and connection and exploration. Something that I've noticed happens a lot for myself, for other people, is that because festivals are this sort of outside space from normal life, there's a tendency, which is really valuable and wonderful, to want to push boundaries, explore limits, get out of our comfort zone, try new things, meet new people, and all of that is fantastic. And it can get us into some uncomfortable situations of feeling like our boundaries aren't respected or feeling like we don't know where they are. So hopefully these tips and tools will be helpful to you as you hit up different festivals wherever you are, or as you just move through your daily life and keep working on boundary setting. So first, quickly, I want to run you through I think it's seven true things about boundaries. Over the years of teaching empowerment self-defense, I've sort of narrowed it down to this short list, and these are things that we should all just know about boundary setting. Yeah, so first true thing about boundaries is that they are personal. What feels good to me may not feel good to you. What is a hard boundary for you might be totally within my comfort zone, right? Hey guys. And so rule 2 about boundaries is we don't get to tell anyone else where their boundaries are, understanding that it is personal and that is going to be different for everyone else. My safe zone might look different from your safe zone, and my danger zone might look different from your danger zone, and vice versa. Number 3, or the third true thing about boundaries, is that they depend, right? They depend on context, on the day, on how I'm feeling, on what space I'm in, on the people that I'm with. And so we're constantly evolving, we're constantly changing, and our boundaries are too. So it is completely okay and normal to one day have a certain boundary, bringing it back to the festival context, have a boundary of, I'm on the dance floor and I want to dance with everyone, and then come back the next day and feel like, you know what, that was I danced with a lot of people yesterday, and I kind of just want to dance with myself, and I don't want to dance with anyone, and that is 100% okay and normal to have that shift in boundaries. And each of us has a right to change our desires, to change our boundaries from one moment to the next, from one day to the next. True thing number 4 about boundaries is that I have a responsibility to let people know where my boundaries are, because unfortunately, we can't expect necessarily for everyone to be so tuned in, especially in a space like festivals where a lot of people are having intense experiences and might not be so perceptive about other people's boundaries around personal space or touch. So it is my responsibility to express my boundaries. It's not my responsibility if someone doesn't like them. So that is where my responsibility ends and someone else's responsibility begins. Often we might not express a boundary because we don't want to hurt someone's feelings or make them feel bad or make them feel uncomfortable, and we sacrifice our own comfort in the bargain. So it is important to remember that I have that responsibility to express my boundary. I'm not responsible for how somebody feels about it. And I can do the best job that I can to express it in a kind, compassionate way. And my responsibility goes until there. True thing number 6 about boundaries. I'm forgetting right now what it is. There are a couple more in there. They'll come back to me. But I wanted to share with y'all 2 tools that I think are really important to have in our toolkit if we're going to festivals, if we're going to dance events, if we're going to places where there is a lot of touch and connection and interpersonal relating. And the first one, probably a lot of you have had this experience, is for what we can do if someone on the dance floor is making us uncomfortable. I don't have someone to help me demonstrate today, so I'm just going to be demonstrating, and you can just imagine the person next to me. But so strategy number 1, you've probably all used, and that's where you just sort of keep moving away from the person, right? You keep trying to create space. And if that works, that's great. But something that happens often is that, you move away and the person moves closer. You move away and the person moves closer, and before you know it, you lost your favorite spot on the dance floor, and you're definitely not having a good time anymore because you're focused on trying to avoid this interaction that you don't want to have. An alternative is to use what's called the power stance or the self-defense stance. I'm going to demonstrate it. And very simply, it looks like this, right? Hands up, and we take a step back. And we can accompany this. It might not make sense to accompany it with a verbal statement, depending on how loud the music is. But the verbal there would be, I don't want to dance right now, or I just want to dance by myself, or you're too close to me, can you take a step back or back off if necessary? Repeated the times that are necessary. Other strategies, of course, we've probably all used are seeking support from a friend or stranger and getting someone to sort of back us up and dance with us or help us create space, getting help from security if it's really, at that level of discomfort or risk. But the power stance is a very simple, fairly universal, physical way of communicating, hey, this is my space and you need to back up out of it. And it shifts the dynamic of power from I'm moving away because you're in my space to I'm staying in my space and I'm asking you to get out of it. So there is a shift in power dynamic that happens with this strategy as well. Okay, so that's number 1. Number 2 is a simple technique for stopping a hug that we don't want to have. Again, for festivals and for life, we can get into this pattern of, we greet everyone with a hug, and so we end up giving hugs to people that maybe we don't feel comfortable hugging, or because we don't feel like we can hug one person and not another person, and so we feel like we need to greet everyone the same way. I think this is sort of supersized at festivals where, people tend to be especially affectionate with friends and strangers. And again, that's a wonderful thing if you're enjoying it. But it's also totally valid to feel like, not today. Today I don't want that much physical contact, or that person sets my alarm bells off and I don't want to hug that person. And we don't need to, just because the social contract says that we need to greet everyone with a hug, it doesn't mean we actually have to do that. So you're going to have to imagine this one, that there's a person here, but the technique, basically you draw a heart with your hands, catching the hands of the other person and giving them back. Again, stepping back and making space. So if someone is coming in for the hug, you catch the hands and you give them back, make space. Alternatives to that, right? You can just take a step back if you have time and say, hey, I don't want a hug, or I'm not so into touch, whatever is genuine and natural for you to say. Something that also happens is sometimes, the hug just happens and we haven't had time to react to it. And in that case, it's also fine. And that is true thing number 5 about boundaries. It's never too late to set them. So sometimes the thing happens in the moment, we freeze, or we're tongue-tied, or we aren't able to communicate a boundary quickly enough. That's fine. We can always come back to the person, especially if it's someone known to us and this is something that has repeated, or that we don't want to repeat a pattern that makes us uncomfortable. We can come back to them later and say, hey, I know we always hug each other. I am actually not such a big fan of hugs, for example, and I would rather that we didn't. Or a moment ago you gave me a hug and I want to communicate to you that actually felt uncomfortable to me. I'd rather that we didn't have that kind of contact in the future, which feels at first, I know, really uncomfortable or outside of the norm, because socially, culturally, that's not usually a way that we're taught to communicate. That feels very direct and maybe even offensive. But again, going back to those basic truths about boundaries, we have a right to have the boundaries that we have, and you have a right to communicate them as you need to feel safe and to feel comfortable in whatever environment you're in. And just because everyone else is okay with a certain kind of contact doesn't mean you have to be. And just because yesterday you were okay with a certain kind of contact doesn't mean today you need to feel okay with the same thing. So true thing number 5, it's never too late to set a boundary. And hey friends, look at all these people. I'm almost finishing, but you'll be able to watch this later. I'm going to save the video and I'm also going to put it up on YouTube. I'm going to leave it there. So that's one strategy for setting boundaries on the dance floor, and one strategy for setting boundaries with hugs or other kind of physical touch. I think these are 2 things that come up a lot, especially in festival settings, but they're also really common in all parts of life, and so I hope that they will serve you at some moment. And I just want to remind you that if it does feel uncomfortable or doesn't feel natural to you, most things won't feel natural until we practice them. So the invitation, if you are heading to Envision or you're heading to other festivals this season, is to try it out. Try out the checking in with yourself and your boundary in a certain moment and communicating it verbally or with body language if something crosses a line. And notice that as you practice it, as you do this more, it will start to feel more natural, and it will start to become more integrated just in your style of communication, of moving through the world and being in the world. Again, if you are coming to Envision, I would love to see you there on the dance floor or at my empowerment self-defense sessions, Monday the 27th at 8 a.m. I know it's an early one. We're going to get loud. We're going to disrupt the next door yoga classes, and that's going to be a lot of fun. And Thursday, March 2nd, sometime early afternoon. Please feel so free to come to both, either. They are all open to everybody, no prior experience required. We're going to fight, we're going to play, we're going to communicate, we're going to learn, we're going to tap into our intuition, our body, our voice, so that we can feel safer and more confident during the festival and for the rest of our lives. That is really my intention with this work always, is that you feel safer and freer to live your life however you want. So I hope to see you there, those of you who are coming to Envision, and those of you who aren't, I hope you find ways to practice these strategies wherever you are. Have a beautiful Sunday. Yay!